Hello everyone, I know I'm a little bit late, sorry about that. Welcome to my weekly live Q&A. My name is Danny Segura. I'm a mixed martial arts reporter for MMA Junkie, and this is my weekly live Q&A, yes, where I answer all your questions regarding everything going on in the combat sports world and more. So without further wait, let's get this started. So as you may know, there's two ways to enter questions. One via Twitter, which is the preliminary way. I've been asking for your Twitter questions. That is closed. So if you didn't get a chance to ask on Twitter, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, you'll get a chance to do so in the YouTube live chat in the later part of this video, as Twitter gets priority in this live stream. So I'll be taking care of that first, the Twitter questions. By the way, if you don't know how to submit Twitter questions, pretty simple. Just follow me on Twitter. Wait till I post. Basically me announcing that I'll be doing a live Q&A, and there you will be able to reply and add to the thread your questions. So yeah, let's get right into it. By the way, I'm sporting this is my 2018 or 2017 Atletico Madrid away jersey. Pretty, one of the coolest Atletico Madrid jerseys, very clean, just let me see, just all black and yellow, right? Shouts out to Atletico. We're still in Champions League, unlike Real Madrid, who got eliminated by Man City last week. So I kind of enjoyed that. I'm not going to lie. I did enjoy watching that. Always enjoy watching Real Madrid's demise. Anyways. All right, yeah, let's get right into it. Super busy week. Sorry I started late. I've been kind of hectic. And it's not even that I'm that busy because I'm on furlough, but I've just been a degenerate because on furlough week, I got no responsibilities. So I stayed up till like 3 a.m. playing video games, and then I was a little behind in some of the stuff that I was supposed to do for this. Like always, got my Colombian coffee with me. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's get into it. Oh, by the way, all right, 1 second. I'll just announce that in a minute. All right, let's get right into it. First question by Mike Otero. Who fights for the vacant belt if Stipe wins and retires? So this weekend at UFC 252, I'm pretty excited for this card. We got a big pay-per-view event with a heavyweight trilogy title bout between champion Stipe Miocic and challenger, former champion as well, in the heavyweight and light heavyweight division, Daniel Cormier. Is going to be a pretty good bout. Two guys that are pretty old at this point. Daniel Cormier is 41. Stipe Miocic, he's high in his 30s, if not already in his 40s. He's probably like 38. He's 37. So not as old as Cormier, but certainly up there in age. And yeah, there's a big question that whoever wins here or lose, we could potentially see a double retirement here. But certainly, I think the one that we're least expecting is the Miocic one, just because he's been spoken about it a little bit, but not as much as Cormier. So yeah, we'll see what happens with him. But if he does win and decides to retire, I mean, it kind of seems like the move, to be honest, because the line in the heavyweight division, I mean, it's quite rough. You got Ngannou there, and he already beat Ngannou. So what would a second win do to his legacy? Would it further it? Not really. I don't think so. I mean, it would certainly not hurt. It would certainly add something to it, but I don't think it'll be defining to his legacy or change it in any way. Then after that, Curtis Blaydes, another really tough fight. That a win over Curtis Blaydes, it might impress us, the hardcores, but beyond that, I don't think I don't even think it'd be a big fight as well, like a big pay-per-view fight. So, I think there's a good chance Stipe Miocic retires. I don't think he'll announce it on the cage. I think he'll wait to see if John Jones has any interest in challenging for the belt, because that'd be a big money fight, and that'd be legacy defining as well. So that'd be a good opportunity for Miocic to stick around. Same thing with Cormier if he wins, same scenario. But if he does leave, and then Daniel Cormier is no longer in the division as well, I think it's pretty obvious. You put Francis Ngannou, and you put Francis Ngannou has to be in that equation. I think due to fairness, you have to put Curtis Blaydes in there, but Curtis Blaydes has already lost twice to Ngannou, so I don't know how much people want to see that. And there's also a good name floating around, obviously, with Derek Lewis picking up a big win over Alexei Oleinik over the weekend, which we can talk about if you guys want later in the video. But I think the best case scenario, and this sounds fucked up, and if Curtis Blades is watching this, he totally has a case, and I would get it if you're a Curtis Blades supporter. Like, I totally understand it. The dude's put in the work. The dude deserves to fight for the belt. But in my opinion, he's 0-2 against Ngannou. Ngannou's 100%, it has to be in that title equation if they do a vacant belt. And I think there's a lot of intrigue with that Lewis matchup, because we know the first one was super boring. I mean, the second one can't possibly be that boring, So I think it's about that. Still promises a lot. It's still about that, because we didn't see much the first time out. It still captures the imagination. It still has fans wondering how it could potentially go if these two do decide to throw down, between Ngannou and Derek Lewis, obviously. And on top of that, I mean, Derek Lewis is a big name. Ngannou, obviously, a big name. I would say both of them are bigger names than Curtis Blades. So I think it would make a lot of sense to put Francis Ngannou in there against Derek Lewis, number 2. I think that'd be the move, But again, if you want to go with Curtis Blades, I get it. I mean, you definitely have the facts to support that claim, and there's not much to argue against there. But again, 0-2 against Ngannou, it's just tough. It's just tough to pitch. It's just a tough fight to pitch. All right. Question number 2. This is by 8 Paths of Wokeness. First off, I'm not a Dustin hater. Yes, you are. We all know you're a Dustin hater, and it's okay. It's okay to be a hater. I'm a hater too on some aspects. Definitely not MMA, because I gotta be professional and not biased. But I'm a Real Madrid hater. I'll say it. I mean, I'm a hater on other sports as well. So it's totally cool to be a hater. 8 Paths of Wokeness. All good, man. All good. But you gotta acknowledge it. All right. I just didn't find it and enjoy him trying to pick certain fights over others, which I get. He's doing what's best for his career and his family. Who would you match up Michael Chandler with? I doubt Dustin would take that fight. There you go, hating on Dustin. So Felder, Hooker, or Al? Yeah, so Michael Chandler, let me set up the scene here. So Michael Chandler fought on Friday at Bellator 243 in the main event against Benson Henderson, won via knockout, and just basically finishing his Bellator contract, the last bout on his contract. So there's a lot of questions. Where will he go? Will he stay with Bellator? Will he go to the UFC? Will he go elsewhere? So there's a lot of questions regarding his future. And one of them is, if he obviously goes to the UFC, who should he fight? I mean, obviously a big name in the sport. Obviously a guy that is very skilled, a former Bellator world champion. Let me pull up the UFC rankings here. I think, at age 34, I mean, it all comes down to, like, what the hell is the UFC going to want to do with him? You know what I'm saying? Like, do they want him to fight for the belt? Because if you do, then you put him in a nice little fight that can set him up for either a number 1 contender bout or getting a title shot. I think there's a lot of good options here. I mean, really, this is the beautiful thing about the UFC's lightweight division, that you can throw Michael Chandler in there against anybody and it'll be exciting. So I think a fight with Beneil Dariush would make a lot of sense. I know Dariush is currently only ranked 14, but he's looked quite good. I think that could set him up to put him in a number 1 contender fight in the future, obviously, if Michael Chandler were victorious. I think a fight with Beneil Dariush would make a lot of sense, would be a lot of fun. I also think a fight with Charles Oliveira will make it a lot of sense and would be a lot of fun as well. Obviously, Charles Oliveira ranked 6th, Dariush ranked 14th, so a big gap there, right? But I think it's a fight that would benefit their opponents as well. I think Charles Oliveira would love to get his hands on someone like Michael Chandler. Same with Beneil Dariush. And they're both in the rankings, which would benefit Michael Chandler here. So I think either or. I think Charles Oliveira or Beneil Dariush would be a lot of fun. That's what I would go with. And as far as Dustin, Dustin doesn't need to fight. That'd be a fun fight too. It'd be ATT versus what used to be Black Zillions. So there's a nice little rivalry there. But to me, Dustin Poirier is way up there. You know what I'm saying? Way up there in the rankings. And unless you're trying to give an immediate title shot, basically, and I mean immediate as in soon, not actually immediate. Probably should have used another word. Yeah, you would put him against Dustin Poirier, but I don't think that's the case here. So again, Charles Oliveira or Beneil Dariush, I think that's the move. All right, moving on. Dustin Love. How big would the Brinks trucks have to be to entice DC to stick around one more fight against John Jones at heavyweight? I think they have to be pretty big, man. But I think they would. It's not like the UFC will have to go the extra mile to pay Daniel Cormier, a hefty amount for him to stick around. I think just the fight itself being that big and being able to sell, a good amount of pay-per-view buys, I think that that itself would entice, Daniel Cormier to stick around. Plus, Daniel Cormier has looked, if we're just going by his last fight against Stipe Miocic, which I know he lost, he still looked incredible. Whereas John Jones, it's kind of the opposite. He's been winning, but he's looked worse than before, to be quite honest. I mean, he certainly hasn't looked as dominant. He certainly hasn't had, the type of performances he had against Daniel Cormier. So he'd definitely be down to fight this version of John Jones. Certainly a heavyweight, which would benefit Daniel Cormier. So I think Cormier sticks around if, John Jones would be willing to, obviously, if he wins and gets the belt, and also if John Jones kind of, sparks some interest and says he wants to move up to heavyweight and actually do it, because we know he's been saying he's been wanting to fight at heavyweight, and I know there's been other factors outside of his control that have stopped him from fighting at heavyweight, but again, it's all been talk, right? Like, if you're going to do it, do it. So I don't think the trucks have to be that big. I think because the fight is so big, they will naturally be big, right? Obviously bringing in pay-per-view buys. So I think the UFC would have to kind of pitch it to them and try to make the fight attractive and obviously, give them a good amount of money and stuff like that. But I think the fight itself just on itself will be big enough for him to want to stick around. So I don't think the UFC will have to go too far, to be honest, to get Daniel to keep fighting. By the way, Dustin, got your mask over here. This is what I wanted to show. So Dustin sent me this this Fabricio Werdum mask, which I will be using. I haven't tried it yet. My face is a little bit too big, but let's see. I don't know if you guys can see it. Hold on. There we go. Oh man, I look so creepy. But yes, this will be good for social distancing. I don't think anyone's gonna be near me with this thing. So yeah, thank you, Dustin. I appreciate it. Very, very cool. I'll post a picture on it on Twitter. Yeah, I appreciate you sending that to me, man. All right, let's keep moving forward here. What is that? The third question? Yep. All right, so also at UFC 252 this weekend, in the co-main event of the card, Marlon Chito Vera will be fighting Sean O'Malley at UFC 252 co-main event. And Liam O'Brien asks, do you think Chito Vera is being overlooked by the broader MMA fan community for his fight with Sean O'Malley? Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, this really is like. I mean, I love Chito. He's a great fighter. He's awesome. He's always been super kind with his time and giving me time to interview him. He was actually on Monday's episode of Hablemos MMA, interview in Spanish. If you speak Spanish, you should check that out. But yeah, he's 100% being overlooked a little bit. Certainly by the fans. I don't know about O'Malley. O'Malley's certainly overlooking him publicly. He said it. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to go in there and knock him out. And then, he's already beefing with Cody Garbrandt. He's already beefing with the champion, Peter Yan. And it seems he's a little distracted. But again, Conor McGregor seemed distracted. Conor McGregor seemed to overlook people, and he clearly wasn't. Because we saw it. When he stepped in the cage, he knew exactly his opponents. He had studied them. He knew what worked, what didn't work. He was 100% ready. He was in the best shape ever, right? So that can just be part of the persona, right? Like, you can just be talking shit. Oh, yeah, I'm going to knock this guy out. You know, this is easy, this and that. But you could actually be working your ass off, be studying him, and, you know, be completely ready for that bout. So publicly, O'Malley's overlooking him, but I don't know if he's actually overlooking him in the camp. O'Malley's certainly a smart fighter, and I think, you know, being a smart fighter that he is, I don't think he would overlook Chito Vera, because Vera is legit, dude. A lot of people think this is like some easy fight where you know, the UFC is just, you know, putting up a can for O'Malley to crush and in a co-main event and you know, explode in stardom and stuff like that. But like, this is a tough fight, man. This is a tough fight. I would say it's like a, obviously there's some recency bias, but I would say it's actually pretty close to like a 50-50. I mean, you know, Chito Vera is by far the toughest test that Sean O'Malley has ever had in his professional MMA career. Tougher than Eddie Wineland. Eddie Wineland, you know, he had his time and all that, but you know, he's someone that's been away from the rankings for many years, whereas Chito Vera was just recently in the rankings, and also it was due to a BS loss. Let's be honest, he beat Song Yadong. You know, he's never been knocked out like Eddie Wineland. It's funny, when I interviewed Chito, he actually brought up a really good point. He's like, dude, everybody talks about this crazy knockout of Sean O'Malley's, you know, putting away Eddie Wineland and all this, and like, you know, I get it, but you know, let's not forget Johnny Eduardo did the same thing. You know, this ain't the first time someone sleeps Eddie Wineland. So, you know, he's also an older fighter, etc. So, you know, a veteran that's, you know, had several wars and has been cracked a lot. You know, Barao cracked him as well. So, yeah, that it's not like it was the first time that somebody knocked out Eddie Wineland. So you got to keep that in mind. So by far, this is Sean O'Malley's toughest test. Vera, you know, I've never seen Vera knocked out. I've never even seen him knocked down, from what I remember. I mean, and we got to keep in mind, this is a guy that fought John Lineker and went like the distance. Honestly, I think if it would have been a 5-round fight, Vera could have won that. Vera could have won that. He was definitely picking up steam in the later part of the fight, and that's kind of part of his style. He starts a bit slow, but you know, picks up as time goes on. So he's fighting someone with a really good chin. Vera is a weird guy in the sense of he's young. Like, people don't realize how young he is. He might be even younger than me, which is pretty crazy. Oh no, we're the same age. We're born in the same year, 1992. He's 27. But yeah, the dude's just 27 and he's got over 20 professional fights. Like, he's a weird mix of like a prospect that's still developing and getting better and getting significantly better, but at the same time he's got like a veteran feel to it because he's been around in the UFC since 2014. So that's a long time, you know. And he's got over 20 fights, so he's got like a veteran feel, but at the same time, you know, he's still very much evolving and has a bit of a prospect feel as well. So yeah, I do think people are overlooking him, but I think the hardcores know what's up when they see Marlon Vera. They know that's someone that's in there to fight. That's someone that's not scared to get into a firefight, not scared for the fight to get ugly. Someone that's very well-rounded, you know, very good ground skills, very dangerous submissions, very good striking as well, volume puncher, can mix things well up, you know, to the head, to the body, to the legs. You know, he's a solid fighter. So I think if Sean O'Malley beats him, especially well, you know, that says a lot about him because, I think really highly of Marlon Vera. But I don't think that will happen. I actually think this will be a pretty competitive fight. I don't expect O'Malley to go in there and just bulldoze, you know, Vera. Why? Because no one has done it. No one has bulldozed Vera. And Vera has fought guys like, you know, Douglas Silva de Andrade, who's a monster. John Lineker, who's a monster, right? You know, he's been fighting some tough dudes. So we'll see. We'll see. All right, let's carry on. The Seaside. What's next for Valerie, and will we ever see her in the UFC? So yeah, shouts out to Valerie Loretta. She picked up her third professional victory on Friday at Bellator 243, defeating Tara Graf. And yeah, she was on the previous episode, not this Monday, but the past one on Hablemos MMA. And yeah, that was a good performance. Like I said on the episode, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and say it was the most exciting performance, because it wasn't. But you know, it's kind of expected. She comes from a karate point fighting system, which, you know, we know what kind of fight, you know, those athletes put on. You know, the guys like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Lyoto Machida, etc. Those are fighters that, you know, usually don't have a really high striking volume. You know, these are fighters that take their time, that are more calculated, that you know, are not eager to rush in. They're more cautious with their moves. So, you know, that's kind of the type the type of fight that goes down. But even in that fight, you know, whenever she had the opportunity to strike, she did. It's not like she was trigger shy as well. You know, beautiful right hand that she landed on Telegraph. She's got a good amount of knockout power, you know, which is hard to see, you know, in women's MMA period, much less, you know, in a lighter weight class such as 125. Obviously, you can see that more at 135 and 145 as the girls get bigger. So all around, it was a great performance and a great victory. As far as what's next, I mean, she's only 22. She's only 3 fights into her professional career. Her amateur career wasn't extensive either. I think she's like 2-1, if I'm not mistaken. So at this point, you just keep doing what Bellator does with their prospects. Keep giving her opportunities. I'd like to see her actually on a main card placement, get a little bit more shine on that end. She was in the prelims, which is fine. I think it's good as well. You know, less pressure for her and all that. But at this point, with, you know, her following and, you know, all the media that she's been, you know, had to deal with, I think she's at a point where, like, you know, the bright lights wouldn't scare her. I don't think putting her in a co-main event of a card or in a main card to kick off a main card would be crazy, you know. So I'd like to see her on main card placement against a fighter that, you know, has relatively the same amount of experience. I think at some point, if they do sign Paige Vincent, that's kind of the fight to make, right? So yeah, we'll see, and we'll see her in the UFC not anytime soon. I think obviously she's very much in development. I don't think the UFC is interested in a 3-0 fighter. Yeah, unless you're like Brock Lesnar or something like that. I don't think the UFC is interested in a 3-0 fighter. And even if she were to get better, I think, you know, she really likes Bellator and also understands that she's developing. So, you know, there's no better place to develop than Bellator, in my opinion. So yeah, she's going to be in Bellator for quite some time. I don't expect her to go anywhere. Great performance, though. I saw a lot of people hating, like, dude, what do you expect? She's 3-0. Like, that was a pretty damn good performance for a fighter that's 3-0. Well, we did that one already. All right, Dustin Love again. How pumped are you for Brandon Moreno versus Alex Perez? Should have been Moreno for the title, but this is definitely an exciting matchup. With a win here, he has to be next, right? Right, I guess. I mean, I thought he was next. I thought he was supposed to fight, you know, the God of War for his first title defense, but it looks like Cody Garbrandt is dropping down to 125 pounds and fighting him instead. Man, I do think Moreno got screwed over here, to be quite honest. I think it was pretty clear that he was the number one contender. Davidson wanted the fight. Pantoja would have been the only guy that you could maybe make an argument for, but, you know, Askarov got that out of, you know, spoiled that party and defeated Pantoja. So to me, it was pretty clear that Brandon Moreno was next. Now the UFC decided to go with the Cody Garbrandt fight, which I'm kind of split about, because I get it. Like, who's a bigger name, Brandon Moreno or Cody Garbrandt? Let's be honest, Cody Garbrandt, obviously. You know, no offense to Moreno, but, you know, he's a former champion. Obviously, he had some big fights, you know, headline pay-per-view events, so he's obviously the bigger star. So I get that. You know, you're trying to make the biggest fight possible. Also, you're trying to, you know, if the champion wins, you know, it's good for the champion, right? Coming off a big win over Joseph Benavidez, 2 wins actually, and then you know, and then Cody Garbrandt. Those are big names. So, you know, obviously it would make the champion look better. And if Cody Garbrandt wins, then all of a sudden you got a very marketable big name fighter, king of the flyweight division, which has been a problem. Usually the people who have been champions haven't been the biggest names or the names that sell. So, that would be a good, I think it's like a win-win for the UFC. So I get that. But at the same time, the UFC, this was a division that not so long ago, there was questions about its future, about where it was going to go, whether it was even going to be a division at all within 2020. So I think those questions have died down, obviously, because they've been doing some flyweight signings and they've been putting on some flyweight fights. So that's obviously a good sign. But at the same time, is like, you want these divisions to be healthy and flourish, but you do things that hinder that growth and that development. And how do you hinder them? By skipping number one contenders and having rightful number one contenders that in their career should be fighting for a belt, and they're in a space where they can fight for a belt. Have them fight other number one contenders and have them eliminate themselves, amongst each other, and not fighting bigger names, right? So then, let's say Cody Garbrandt loses and goes back up to 135. All of a sudden, you're going to have a knocked out contender. Whether it's Brandon Moreno or Alex Perez, one of them has to lose, right? Unless it's a draw. And even then, you'll probably run it back. So you're not giving, flyweights to challenge for the belt. And then on top of that, you're potentially giving the belt, right, if Cody Garbrandt wins, to someone that doesn't have, the best interest for the division. So he's already someone that is dropping down to 125 and is already talking about being a dual champion and going back up to 135. Really, we all know the bigger fights are at 135. So you're going to win it's a very likely scenario for Cody Garbrandt to win the belt at 125, go up to 135, fight for another title, and never, visit 125 again. That's 100% possible. Is that healthy for the division? No, not at all. It's horrible. So again, you want this division to flourish and to develop and to, work well and do well for the promotion. But at the same time, you're not putting the division in a scenario where for it to succeed, for it to keep advancing, for it to develop. So I think it's kind of a short-sighted move. I think the move would have been give Moreno the title shot, have him fight Davidson Figueiredo, and then have Cody Garbrandt prove he can not only make 125 but also win at 125 pounds and put him against Alex Perez. That's two very good boxers. Alex Perez is a phenomenal boxer. In my opinion, might be the best boxer in the flyweight division. So that would have been a killer matchup. Then you have Cody Garbrandt, if he does win, campaign for a shot then. But again, I get it. It's a big fight, but I just don't think this is the healthiest for the flyweight division. And then don't go complaining then, oh, the flyweight division sucks, it doesn't sell. Well, yeah, you promote within the division fighters from other divisions. You don't give title shots to the fighters that have been putting work in that division. So how do you expect it to succeed? How do you expect those fighters to, make big names and do big things if they're not put in the right scenarios? So whatever. I mean, obviously I'm not a matchmaker. Obviously I'm not president of the UFC, so that's not on me. They know what they're doing, but that's how I feel about it. Regardless, despite that rant, I do think that Davidson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt is a very exciting fight. It's a fight that I'm going to be watching, and it's a fight that would likely be fight of the night. I mean, it's an awesome fight. It's a great fight. Again, I don't hate the fight. I don't hate Cody Garbrandt. I just would have liked to see him, compete ones at 125 before fighting for the actual belt. Well, did that one already? Man, I'm all over the place. All right. Okay, this is a two-part question by The Executioner 91. And he asks, should Cejudo have challenged Vulkanovsky before retiring? It honestly seems like the stars are aligning for him to win a third title. There isn't a huge height difference, and both are very, very skilled athletes with different tools they can easily apply. Now with Jair Zabit off, Zombie Ortega planned, and Max Holloway losing twice, it seems like the perfect time for Cejudo to get the shot. Who would you favor between Alex and Cejudo, and why? I say it's 50-50. I actually think it's not that competitive. I think Vulkanovsky wins that. I feel pretty confident about picking Vulkanovsky. I feel pretty confident. I mean, the weight's just too much. I mean, he's just way bigger than Cejudo. Yes, they're kind of similar in height, but I've stood next to both Vulkanovsky and Cejudo, and there's a clear size difference between the two. Obviously, one used to be a former flyweight. One used to be a former rugby player that weighed over 200 pounds. So, big difference in size there. And skills-wise, I think Vulkanovsky is world class. So, having the skills, having the size advantage, it's going to be one of those things where I just, because of the size, I don't see Vulkanovsky having success against. I don't see Cejudo having success against Vulkanovsky. Maybe some success, but I think Vulkanovsky should win that convincingly. And no, I don't think there should be a fight. Again, this whole thing where like you win a title and that gives you the right to fight for other titles in other divisions where you have no history in, to me it's BS, to be quite honest. Again, this is no hate to Cejudo or to Garbrandt or to any specific fighter that does that. I don't, nothing personal. Again, this is just my preference. I like to see number one contenders fight champions because that's the way it's supposed to be. Every now and then you want to do a super fight. Okay, it's a little different. It's a little different if you have a belt. Champ versus champ fight. Champ versus champ fight. That makes sense. If the times align and if there isn't a clear number one contender in the divisions, or if the fight is so big that it merits skipping a number one contender, okay, I'm for it. But Cejudo doesn't have the belt right now, so just because you're a former champ, you get to skip the queue? No, it doesn't work like that. I'd like to see Zabit challenge Vulkanovsky. Now, I wouldn't hate the Cejudo, the Jair Rodriguez Zabit fight because Rodriguez is saying, look, I'm not that injured. I can come back in October, November. Wait for me. That's what he's saying. But I just think the division needs to move on. If Vulkanovsky plans on defending his belt, around November, October, or close to that time, I say skip the Jair fight. Just put Zabit in there and then give Jair another fight. Put him in a number one contender fight. But do Max Holloway Jair for number one contender. Fuck it. I think something like that should be done. But yes, I don't like this whole thing where like you just because you have a big name, you can skip the queue and challenge for a belt. Look, if Cejudo really does have big plans for 145 pounds, if he really does want to become a 3-weight champion, which look, I'm not gonna doubt him. He's the greatest, one of the greatest combat sports athletes of all time. He's a phenomenal talent. I certainly can't doubt that guy. Okay, put in work at 145. Go fight someone at 145. Go fight Jair. Go fight Zabit. Go fight a Korean zombie. Well, they're in the same team, so that would make sense. But go fight a Brian Ortega. They're probably boys, so they wouldn't fight. But you get my point. Go fight a number one contender. Go fight somebody in the top 5. And if you can beat them, then yeah, fight for the belt. All right. Next question. There's another 2-part question by the Executioner 91. Also, the last question on Twitter. So if you got questions and you want to throw them in the YouTube live chat, please do that, and I will get to it in a bit. All right. Okay. The Executioner 91 says, why does MMA news and fame recycle so much faster than other sports? It just takes 1 week for a fight or even megastars to lose their shine. We saw this with Easy after Romero, Jorge Jones after Reyes. They didn't lose too much shine, but they were put in a position where they need to win / perform in their next fight. Is this one of the reasons why fighters will never gain leverage over the UFC for long? Yeah, for sure. 100%. Well, so it's a 2-part question. So the first question is why does sort of the news and fame cycle move much faster in MMA than other sports? So it's quite simple. One, because there isn't, before it kind of used to be worse, but in a way kind of better. Before the implementation of the rankings, I feel like before there was no official rankings, obviously, so that's not good. But at the same time, I feel like it was kind of clear who was number one contender, and the UFC did have a habit of labeling number one contender fights a lot more often. Like they would put a fight on a fight night or even a pay-per-view, and they would outright say it in the lead up, this is a title eliminator bout. And people knew, and that was respected. I remember when, what's his name? when Ronnie Yaya fought, shit, I'm blanking, the Team Alpha Male guy, Chad Mendes. Dude, Chad Mendes like dominated him, and it was like a very dominant decision, but it wasn't like a knockout or anything like that. It wasn't like the best performance to get a title shot from. But again, it was labeled before that. This is a #1 contender fight. This is a title eliminator fight, and they respected that. You know, regardless whether it was kind of boring or whatever the fact may be. So that was kind of good. But also they didn't have rankings, which would kind of leave you wondering where the hell am I in the division, right? So that's kind of it's a give and take here with the implementation of the rankings. But anyways, so I know I'm going on a little bit of a rant here, but my point basically of saying that was basically, for example, in any soccer league or whatever, there's points. You win a game, you hold on to that victory, right? Real Madrid just lost to Man City. They had lost previously 2-1 at home, right? So, Man City held on to that score and carried it on. Whereas MMA, you can't just win a fight, win points, get in the top 5 and be like, all right, this is my top 5 spot, and I can hold out and I can hold on to this. No, they can boot you out of the rankings at any point in time, especially if you're not competing and if you sit out, because we know the UFC train moves on, the UFC cycle moves on, the fights keep going. You know what I'm saying? So if you're not fighting, you're gonna fall behind. Because other fighters are gonna have more knockouts, more submissions, more finishes. Beating more higher profile opponents, etc. So you kind of have to keep up with the division, unless you have like a super big name like a Jorge Masvidal or a few others that you can sit out a bit. But even then, you can only do that for so long because Dana White has said it. The UFC moves on. We keep going. If you don't want to fight, then we'll find someone else that will fight. You know what I'm saying? So that's like a big issue as well, that it's hard to hold on to things. So like, of course, the cycle moves on, other fighters pick up knockouts, so they kind of forget about what you've done in the past as well. And also, as far as like leverage with the UFC, a big thing of it is again, like I mentioned, they can move on from matchups. If you're not willing to fight for the belt or for whatever conditions, then they'll just get Gilbert Burns or somebody else, so they can keep just doing that. There's options as well. Whereas like, if Real's gonna play Man City a second leg and Real doesn't, for whatever reason, doesn't see fit the conditions, they can't just put somebody else in there. Obviously they can't do that because that would be a forfeit, but you get what I'm saying. There's more of a schedule, there's more of a structure in other sports. So, but that's what happens with combat sports. And that's what PFL is like trying to do and kind of change, by implementing the season. So there's that. Whoop. All right, so that was it for the Twitter questions. Now I will be taking the YouTube questions. All right, so we got about 15-20 minutes here, so feel free to throw anything on the YouTube live chat, and I will get to that momentarily. Let's see here. Okay, this is a good one. Josh Edwards. Everyone seems too hard on Weidman, in my opinion. He had so much pressure on him, and his performance looked like someone that was nervous competing in a strange environment. What do you think? Yeah, I'm with you, 100%. I'm with you. I agree. Whatever you're saying right now, that's what I've been kind of trying to voice a little bit. I said it a little bit on Twitter, and then I said it on my Spanish podcast, Hablemos MMA, with MMA Junkie on Monday. And yeah, dude, I feel like everybody's like shitting on Weidman. Everyone's like, oh, Weidman had a pretty bad performance. He's done. He's the worst fighter in the world and all this stuff. And everyone's like shitting on Weidman. But like, keep this in mind. Like, he went into a fight being 1-5 in his last 6 bouts. That's a pretty bad record. Most fighters would get cut with that record. Most fighters would go, 1-4, sometimes even 1-3. But certainly at 1-5, most fighters get cut from that record. But it's Chris Weidman, former champion, big name. he was also fighting, you know, some of the best in the division. So we got to keep that in mind. But yeah. So first of all, you know, he's coming off a pretty bad record. Co-main event again. This wasn't the biggest card, so there wasn't a lot of pressure. But like just the fact that like your career could be on the line, that's a lot of pressure as well. And you know, he was fighting a pretty tough dude. You know what I'm saying? And yes, the performance wasn't, you know, the type of performances that we're used to seeing with Chris Weidman, as far as like champion Chris Weidman. But shit, he dug deep. He dug deep. You know, at the end of that second round, he looked pretty winded. He looked pretty tired, and the momentum seemed to be shifting. And he really had to dig deep, had to really, you know, put his heart on display and grind it out and come out with the victory. That was a super veteran performance. So if you're able to dig deep at whatever age that he's in, how old is he? He's in his mid-30s probably. He's 36. If you're able to dig that deep at 36, you still have something. You still have something, because a lot of veterans at that age, with the amount of damage that he's taken, they're not able to dig deep. They're just not. And you see it all the time. They break. So if you're able to dig that deep, you definitely have something. You definitely have something left in the tank. I don't know how much, but you have something. And look, you got a nice little win. I mean, he went back to his roots and started grappling. I think it was a good win. And again, like he said on Twitter, the goal for this fight wasn't to like prove he's the next title contender, prove he can, you know, present problems to the champion and show certain skills that no one else in the division has. No, that wasn't the goal. The goal for this bout was to win. That's it. And he did that. Mission accomplished. So congrats to Chris Weidman. That's it. No one should be shitting on his performance. He won. He got the victory. Okay, you know, you're still in this. Now, the next fights will determine, okay, let's see how much you have left in the tank. Let's see what version of Chris Weidman that we have now. Let's see what that version can do and what it can achieve in the next bouts. But with this fight, it was just getting a victory. That was it. And he did that. So mission accomplished. You know, passed that test with an A. And something that I'm seeing that's good as well, I'll throw this in here. He's also, I'm not saying he's like reinventing himself, but he is going back to his roots. Like for some time, we saw really Chris Weidman become mostly a boxer, and he's a pretty damn good boxer. Especially if you watch that Jackrabbit fight. I know he lost it, but his hands were looking good as well as his head movement. He's got good boxing. But really what made him champion was his wrestling, was his grappling. I mean, I remember that this is the guy that out-grappled Damian Maia on short notice with like a super drastic weight cut. He's a very good grappler. So I'm kind of glad that he's going back to his roots, because clearly on the feet it wasn't working out. It's nice to have those skills. It's nice to have the striking if you know, you're forced to rely on it sometimes, but you know, dude, you're All-American, right? You're one of the best wrestlers, or one of the best wrestlers in the division, or you were one of the best wrestlers in the division. So go back to that and build off that, because that's what made you great. So that's good as well. You know, he's a fighter that's trying different things, and he's a fighter that looks to be you know, trying to sort of break out of this bad funk that he was in, and he did. So yeah, good for him. I'd love to see him against Shoeface, or, you know, apparently Luke Rockwool is coming back as well. Anderson Silva trilogy fight, you know, those type of fights. But I do think there's more to Weidman than what we've seen. Again, I'm not saying he's gonna go on a title run, but I do think, you know, he there's a few more good fights out of him for sure. Man, what's with this talk? Do you think Habib should fight GSP? I have no interest in seeing that fight, and I'm like the only one who thinks GSP is old and just doesn't care about him anymore. I'm kind of with you. You know, GSP is old, so that's not like an opinion. That's a fact. Old for an athlete. He's 39. He's going on 40. So to be a professional fighter, yes, that's quite old, especially in the lighter weight classes. You know, if you're a heavyweight, it's a little different. Still kind of old for heavyweight, but a little different. And yeah, I mean, it's a big fight. I think maybe if they do book it and it rolls around, I'm sure it'll feel big, and I'll kind of eat my words. But I'm kind of with you. Like, as of now, I don't have really much interest in a Habib GSP fight. I just don't. I'm more interested in seeing, you know, Justin Gaethje versus Habib. I know it's not a big, the fight's not as big, but like I just think he poses more challenges. I think obviously he's proven at 155 to be, obviously by winning the interim belt, being a legit threat to Habib, and yeah, I'm just more interested in that. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think right now it doesn't make sense because there's obviously an interim champion, and it feels like there are some challenges for Habib. Dustin Poirier has been looking great. Tony Ferguson, I know he lost, but I still kind of want to see that kind of a little bit at some point, depending on how Ferguson looks. Right, there's Connor as well. We'll see what he does. So yeah, there's interesting stuff going on at 155. We'll see maybe a few months from now if he keeps his belt and see how the division's looking, because that fight could make sense maybe down the line. But as of now, I agree with you. I don't have too much interest in it. Wow, that's interesting. Josh Edwards, does DC call out Jones if he beats Stipe? I don't know, but that's not a crazy idea at all. Let's see. Josh Edwards again. Who does Luke Rockwool make his comeback fight against? Do you think he still competes in the top 10, in the middleweight top 10? Let's see. Let's check out the middleweight top 10. To be honest, his last performances, unlike Weidman has a good point. He always said, like, I know like fighters always have this mentality, especially fighters that are on bad losing streaks, like, oh, I was doing so good until the moment that I lost, and you're like, yeah, you lost. And there seems to like not be much there. Like obviously, everyone can be doing good until they lose, right? So that kind of seems like a dumb argument for like a lot of fighters, but for Chris Weidman, I do gotta say, there's a little bit of truth to that. There's a little bit of backing in the argument, because for example, like obviously a Dominic Reyes fight, he got absolutely steamrolled, but the Jacare fight, dude, that one fight of the night, and I thought he was looking really good. Like his boxing was looking better than ever, or at least for a long time. His head movement, I clearly remember that looked good. And then prior to that, he fought Kelvin Gastelum and beat Gastelum. Gastelum, like, say what you want about Gastelum, he shows up, he sometimes doesn't. He's not, supposed to be fighting at 185. He's supposed to be fighting at 170. Whatever. Say whatever you want about him. But like Gastelum is a game fighter. Gastelum can, he's a top 10 fighter. Like, so that was a legit win. And then the Mousasi one was that controversial, kind of a little bit, no? From what I remember, maybe. But yeah, like there's definitely a case to say that like he was definitely having some success until he wasn't. It wasn't like he was looking washed and then he got destroyed. I think his chin might not be the same that it used to. That's why we've seen more finishes and him getting knocked out. That's fair to say. And at 36 and taking the amount of damage that he's taken, that's a fair assessment. But yeah, I think it's smart for him to go back to his wrestling at this point in his career. But anyways, does Luke Rockwool compete with the top 10 at middleweight? Again, unlike Chris Weidman, he's lost as well, but he's looked actually not good in his losses. Like it's not like he was looking good, and then until the point of defeat, he was showing his skills and all that. No, he's just not looked good. Period. So I don't really know where Luke Rockwool is at this point in his career. To be honest, I have no idea. My guess is yes. Top 5, no. Some of the guys that are maybe 10, 9, 8, maybe. I think 6, 7. That could get a little dicey for him, but I don't know. With him is very weird. So like I'm looking at the top 10 right now. So can he beat Edmund Shabazian? Maybe. I think people would favor Shabazian in that one. Can he beat Uriah Hall? Maybe. Can he beat Kelvin Gastelum? I would say no. Can he beat Derek Brunson? I'd favor Brunson at this point. That's number 7. And then 6, Darren Till. 5, Joel Romero. Then it gets no good there. But can he beat Brad Tavares, ranked 12? Maybe. I don't know. I'd like to see him in a bout where where we're able to know where he's at. You know what I'm saying? Because if you put him against Joel Romero, if you put him against a Jared Cannonier, if you put him against a Robert Whittaker, obviously those guys are booked, I know. But let's say, he comes back after those guys fight. If he gets wrecked in the first round, that doesn't tell us anything, because a lot of people can get wrecked in the first round by Joel Romero, by Jared Cannonier, by Paulo Costa. So, in my opinion, he should fight someone, like Marvin Vettori, fight someone like Brad Tavares, fight Gastelum. Gastelum would be probably the toughest matchup I would put him up against. That's number 8. So, yeah, it'd be from 8 and below. I wouldn't put him against 7, 6, 5, none of those fights. So, yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. To answer your question, I have no idea. Just his last performances are so tricky. So, I have no idea. But I'd like to see him against the top 15, see how he does. Okay. Josh Edwards says, just to follow up with the DC and Jones thing, John Anik seems to be convinced that DC is not retiring if he wins and fights Jones. There's a few that make... What? There are a few that make it compelling that he will. I don't know. I mean, again, it makes sense. It was talked about. I remember, after Cormier lost to Jones the second time, it just felt like, yeah, this thing's over. It's done. And remember, he was crying, and, they even asked him, oh, what about a third fight or something like that? I think whoever interviewed him, Rogan or someone. And he's like, oh, no, never mind. They didn't ask him that. They asked him something like, oh, what are your thoughts on this rivalry or something like that? And he basically said, for there to be a rivalry, it needs to be 1-1. This wasn't a rivalry. I'm 0-2, he beat me, and that's that. And that's when he was, crying and all that. And then at that point in time, it felt like, yep, this is done. This chapter's closed. But then DC goes up to heavyweight, beats Miocic, looks incredible. Even, and then at that point when he had the belt, I remember there was a lot of compelling talk about a potential champ versus champ fight between Cormier and Jones at heavyweight. And to be honest, I feel like at this point in time, like you mentioned, there might not be a lot of people talking about it. John Anik might seem a little crazy with that comment. Again, I don't know exactly what he said. But I do think if he were to win the belt, and if he does call out John Jones, I think all that will get reignited again. And I think, there'll be a lot of people interested in a third fight. I know it's 0-2, but it'd be, I think there'd be a lot of interest in a fight at heavyweight. So yeah, especially if Cormier manages to look to look good in there. I think a lot of people would be interested in seeing a heavyweight fight with the current version of John Jones that we're seeing today. Go up to the big boys division and challenge for the belt there. I think there'd be a lot of interest there. And I think, yeah, John Anik is onto something. Again, it's a little difficult to say because it all depends on Saturday and how DC looks and if he wins, of course. So we'll see. But who was it? I forgot what media outlet interviewed Javi Mendes, obviously Cormier's coach, head coach at AKA, and he said something like, yeah, he's definitely not 41 years old. He's not competing like a 41-year-old fighter. If he wants to, he can go on and continue fighting. And I know it's his coach. His coach is obviously supposed to say good things about the fighter, but if Mendes is usually on point with his assessment. If you get his backing, it means something for sure. So yeah, we'll see. Chris Weidman versus Anderson Silva or Luke Rockwool, which is the more compelling matchup? If we're exclusively talking about for Chris Weidman, I say Luke Rockwool because they've only fought once, and they have a little bit of beef. So I'm sure Chris Weidman would want to get that one back, and also Rockwool's been knocked out, so obviously Chris Weidman probably sees that and sees that as a good opportunity to sort of even things out. So I think there's more compelling, it's more compelling the Chris Weidman versus Luke Rockwool bout. Specifically talking about just matchups for Chris Weidman. But if we're just talking about in general, that sort of trio there, I would say Silva versus Rockwool is very intriguing. I think that's more intriguing than Chris Weidman versus Rockwool because one, it's a fight that we haven't seen, right? The other variations we've seen. And two, I don't know, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. Plus, they're both really long and rangy. I wonder if Silva can find that chin, right? I wonder if Rockwell can use his size and drag Silva to the ground, who Silva's got a good ground game as well. So that's actually very interesting to me. I'd make that fight if I were the UFC. Rockwool versus Anderson Silva. Makes sense. Looks great. Next question. Who looks more creepy in their Werdum mask? You or John Morgan? Thanks, Danny. John Morgan did look pretty creepy. I don't know. I mean, I got the hair. I got the crazy hair right now, the quarantine. I know I'm looking wild. I will get a haircut this week. But, John Morgan's got those piercing red blue eyes, right? So that definitely gets more focus with the mask. So I don't know. I would have to go back and look at the picture, but I think I give a pretty good challenge with the creepiness there, with the hair and then the Werdum mask. Definitely some social distancing going on there for sure. Let's see. Why is nobody talking about Sean O'Malley training with Augusto Mendes? Went toe-to-toe with some good grapplers at Quintet as well. I think people are underestimating his dedication to jiu-jitsu. I don't think people are underestimating his jiu-jitsu. I just think, one, he shines on the feet. Like, look at that Eddie Wineland knockout. So if you have a performance like that, people are obviously going to talk about your striking and not your jiu-jitsu because you're knocking fools out rather than submitting them. I think that's just kind of obvious. So I don't think people are underestimating O'Malley's jiu-jitsu. I just think if you assess him as a fighter and you go, okay, where's O'Malley most dangerous? I think it's pretty obvious that's his striking. And he's been working with Augusto Mendes. This is nothing new. He's been working with Augusto Mendes for a long time. Augusto Mendes has been, at the MMA lab for many years now, and same thing with O'Malley. So yeah. I don't think people are underestimating. I don't think anyone's saying that that's his big weakness, his jiu-jitsu. I don't think it's as strong as his striking, but I wouldn't say it's his weakness. So I don't think people are underestimating. And I didn't see O'Malley at Quintet. I should actually probably go watch that. I'm curious to see what his jiu-jitsu only looks like. Because jiu-jitsu and MMA looks a lot different than jiu-jitsu in the grappling sport. What's that bread tie on your finger? Oh, no. This is just those little things that you put cables with. I had some cables that I set up here, so I was just messing around with that. Giancarlo Valerio, how high are you? I'm not. I'm actually surprised I haven't gotten that recently. For like a while, I don't know if you guys remember. When was this? The first live Q&As, I think. The first few ones. I was doing them at night too, so maybe my face was a little bit more worn down as the day progressed. But yeah, everybody always in the comments were like, "Yo, how stoned are you?" But no, I'm not high. Maybe the reflection here gives me red eyes. I don't know. Somebody asking about Geoff Neil. I don't know much about him. I read the story. I read his Instagram post, but I don't know if there's been further information on that. I have no idea. I'm on furlough again, so on furlough, I kind of just not really. I mean, I tune into the news obviously and keep up and check Twitter and all that, but obviously without working, I'm less involved and a little more distant from MMA, unless it's big headlines, obviously. So I don't really know exactly what his deal is. I know he went to the hospital because of he was septic. That's when you have some sort of infection and it reaches your bloodstream. And he was in the hospital and apparently he almost died. That's what he said. But I don't know details beyond that. But I think he's fine now. Hopefully, obviously wishing the best to him. Let's see. How's Hachiko doing? He's good. He's sleeping right now. We're actually gonna go to the dog park later. Again, furlough week. This is his favorite week because, you know, all the attention goes to him. So, and I don't have much to do. So, especially with this pandemic here in New York, things are limited. So, you know, going to a park with him or the dog park and stuff like that. You know, those are his. Those are his activities. But he's actually gained weight. He's a lot thicker than before. Purposely. Someone told me once, like, on the streets, like, oh my God, he's so skinny. Some girl said that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot what I said. And then that kind of stuck with me. I'm like, I felt like a bad dad. I'm like, oh my God, am I not giving him the right amount of food? But I was. But yeah, I made sure to give him more food just because I want him to look healthy and not skinny. Marcos Aceves. Yeah, well, we did talk about Cody getting the title shot. You can kind of watch it after this is done, or you can rewind and check that out. Basically, it's BS, but I get it. That's to sum up my entire rant on that. All right. Any more questions? Any chance Chito wins via decision over Sugar? Could be. When, we'll see. I think that fight's very much 50-50. I don't really know how it's going to play out, but I think it's very likely that it goes to a decision, actually, because, yes, O'Malley has very good striking, and apparently he's got some knockout power, but Chito's tough as shit, man. He's got a good chin. He's got good striking defense as well. You don't really see Chito getting knocked down or knocked out, really, so... I think he can drag this out, and he's pretty scrappy as well. So for him to win a decision, I think that's likely. Yeah. Okay, Giancarlo Valerio asking here, what do you think about Zaleski versus Kiamev? I think Eliseo won his last fight. Yeah, he fought recently, right? Eliseo Zaleski is this guy that, like, I don't know why he doesn't have any more pop. I'm pulling up his record right now. I don't know why he doesn't have more pop in the UFC, because, like, he's an exciting fighter. He's a skilled fighter. I don't think he's like the best fighter in the world. Not the best fighter at 170 pounds, but not so long ago, he was in like a stupid win streak, like 7-fight win streak, and beating good names. Max Griffin, Lyman Good, Omari Akhmedov, The Leech. Oh, no, he lost to The Leech. He beat Curtis Millender. But yeah. Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, he's coming off a split decision loss. He fought at UFC 251 against Muslim Salikhov. And, I guess that fight makes sense. For Kiamev, I think at this point, like, Kiamev is, like, such a interesting prospect and looks to be a force to be reckoned with at 170. But that's now because he looks so damn dominant. But, I'm sure, like Edmund Shabazian or some other of these prospects that, they get a few exciting wins here and there, and all of a sudden you think the world of them and you think they can be world champions. And they can. I mean, both of them are young, especially Shabazian. He's a lot younger, but it happens a lot in MMA because in boxing, like, these prospects get to prove themselves like 20 fights, something like that, fighting manageable challengers, and within 20 fights, obviously 20 fights, it's such a deep pool that, like, you pretty much get a good, for the most part, obviously it's never going to be 100% accurate, but you do get a nice little idea of their potential and their ceiling, right? Whereas MMA, really the pool for these prospects, especially in the UFC, is usually like 2, 3, 4 fights, maybe, depending on who you are, maybe 5, right? If you don't have that, they don't give you that much attention, maybe you can go on a 5-fight win streak. But the moment you put on a solid win streak, I mean, they just start giving you higher and higher opposition, and yeah, that happens. So like Edmund Shabazian shouldn't. If we're looking at a boxing model, Edmund Shabazian shouldn't have been fighting Derek Brunson. He should have been fighting, again, more people outside of the top 15, and then we get a bigger pool of what he can do, and then that's when we get an accurate representation of his ceiling, right? But But yeah. So anyways, that I just say that to point out that like we think that he's a very good fighter, and I'm not saying he's not. But it just takes that one Eliseo Selecki guy that has been around for a long time and has tons of experience and is clearly proven to be a UFC caliber fighter, obviously with a lot more wins in the UFC than losses. It just takes that one type of performance to kind of, give you a hard loss and halt all momentum. In my opinion, just keep giving him guys that he can crush for a bit. Two more fights. That's it. And then give him a nice little boost in opponent. But no rush with that guy. No rush with that guy. I think it'd be fun to see him just smash people, as he says. That'd be fun. But yeah, I mean it's a fine fight. I don't hate it, but I just, again, if you guys have seen this live Q&A, I always like to err on the side of caution. All right, I'll answer one more and dip out. Do you think Maya has a chance against the Bullet? Nope. Saludos. Valentina Shevchenko is going to hold on to her belt for a very, very long time. Unless something terribly wrong happens in that cage where she gets injured in a scramble and, tears her knee or something. I don't see Valentina Shevchenko losing. No disrespect to Jennifer Maia, but Shevchenko is just that good. She just is. James Fallon, does Michael Chandler use threat of signing with the UFC solely to boost his Bellator contract? Yes, of course. That's free agency. Same thing goes in just professional life. You get a job and someone offers you another job with more money. You can go back to your employer and be like, hey, I'm getting offered more money at this other place. You want to give me more money? That's just the way it works. Yeah. And if they don't, then you leave. So that's basically what free agency is. Free agency is especially if you're a good fighter like Michael Chandler and you have a name. Obviously, free agency benefits you a lot. But that's really what it is. It's the threat of each other, right? It's the threat of who wants you, right? So if the UFC wants to sign you, you can go hey, but I might re-sign with Bellator, so you got to make it worth it for me to hop over to the UFC, or vice versa. You can, hey, the UFC wants me, they're offering me money. Bellator, what can you do for me? That's the way free agency works. All right, yeah, no, that does it for the questions. I'm gonna end it here. I know I started a little later, so I made sure to go a little bit over. In fact, 15 minutes. I'm an hour and 7 minutes in this live Q&A. Thank you guys for tuning in. A couple of announcements. Obviously, if you are a Spanish speaker, make sure to check out Monday's episode of Hablemos MMA if you haven't already. Spoke with Chito Vera, who fights in the co-main event at UFC 252 this weekend. So pretty big fight for him. Pretty big fight for the Latin market, for Ecuador, obviously. And yeah, it's all around a great fight. So looking forward to that one. Check out that episode. And yeah, check out also next week's episode. That's gonna be an interesting one too. What else? I might do because it's a pay-per-view event, I might do a preview and recap of UFC 252. So stay tuned to that. Follow me on Twitter over here. Oh, I didn't even put it. This is crazy. Right here. At Danny Segura TV, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I stopped posting on Facebook, but I'm going to start posting again. Follow me, Twitter and Instagram are the main ones. I will post a time and day for that preview and that recap. And I'm going to try to get a guest for it. I'm going to try to get somebody to break the fights down with me. Because it's a big card. And, it's a fun card to break down. It's a good card. So yeah, stay tuned to that. And yeah. And then like always, I always forget to say this, but you can feel free to donate on the super chat as well. I mean, this thing's over, but maybe on the next one. But anyways, also shouts out to Dustin Love. I appreciate the mask, brother. I appreciate everybody that submitted questions. Thank you so much. And yeah, stay tuned for a time for the UFC 252 preview and recap after the event. So stay tuned to that. All right, I'm out of here. See you guys.